Hi, you made it to my channel, the Niche Gaming Hub. Today I'm going to review the ANK MK38. As with all of my reviews, they're based on my New Game Plus settings and in the regions that I've used those trucks at the time of the review. So at the time of this review, I've completed the Alaska region, and of course I got the ANK MK38 and I used it there extensively. The New Game Plus rules that I select balance fun and challenge. I start off with some extra money and get 3 times more income per job so that I can buy some extra trucks and upgrades. My rules make buying all add-ons possible right from the start, which doesn't matter after Alaska because you get the rank 30 anyway, but it does help you initial start of your playthrough. My rules allow me to sell trailers and trucks back for 50% of their value, but they also include rules that make automatic truck recoveries, auto loading 4 times more expensive, and fuel 6 times more expensive. They make all the garage repairs cost money, and all repairs 2 times more points than normal, and for trucks within the region, and for trucks outside the region 4 times more. So basically, if you get 20 points of damage, it'll cost you 80 if you take, let's say, a North American truck and use it in the Russian map. And you damage it there, it'll cost you 80 points for that 20 points of damage. Traveling between regions is paid, and when you buy a fuel add-on for any truck, most of the time, especially for the big ones, you have to fill it with fuel from what you have in the region. And I restrict contests to only 1 try, so you can't use them to farm money. I'll mention hard mode every now and then. I'll often talk about how my rules differ from that mode because I know how many people play it. Hard mode does require you to suffer through many weaker vehicles just so you can survive, whereas I prefer to have a little bit of luxury so that I can evaluate the differences between the trucks, use their advantages, and have a good playthrough. I still won't be able to be reckless with my money or trucks, and some rules add more difficulty than hard mode actually. So the realistic simulation and challenge is still there. Now with that context in mind, let's talk about the ANK MK38. The American Motors Coporation came on the scene when they purchased the Jeep Corporation from Kaiser, a company known at that time for its rugged military trucks. AMC changed its name to AM General Corporation thereafter. In fact, the word Jeep has become synonymous with rugged off-roading trucks, even when not manufactured by that corporation, and even though Jeep at that time didn't develop for the commercial or civilian market. Jeep was owned by AM General Corporation from 1970 to 1987. Jeep's defense contracts and non-commercial off-roading vehicles shaped American Motors' offerings. In addition to metropolitan buses and Jeeps, AM General produced the HMMWW, the Humvee C-Series, the M35, the M939, the M809, and the M939 lines of military trucks. By the late 1970s, the M809 series 6x6 trucks, based on a 1949 design, were becoming outdated, obsolete. So a product improvement package was developed to rebuild and update the M809 into the M939. Now it wouldn't be until 1982, the same year, a French automotive manufacturer named Renault acquired a controlling interest in AM General Corporation, that American Motors would begin converting the M809 trucks into the M939 series and M939 A1 series. And AM General would continue to manufacture these trucks for the U.S. military forces until 1987. In 1985, the Kia Special Vehicle Division of the KIA Motors Coporation got the contract to manufacture the M939, as well as many other military cargo trucks. Kia still produces this same truck to this very day, produced by the American military forces, even though there are more modern, updated versions, different variants or similar trucks with better functionalities. But this military cargo truck, whether it's a 5-ton, well, this one's a 5-ton, but they're called 5-ton because that's what they typically haul. But you know, there's 10-ton versions and 15-ton versions. They're mainly made for troops and military cargo. So these kind of trucks, they're still being produced. And this very M939 series of trucks, all its variants, are still being produced to this very day. The early M939 and A1 versions were rebuilds of the old M809s. The A2 version was its own build and therefore used a different engine. We'll talk about the engine soon. The M939 was a military cargo truck built for rough terrain. Considered as a part of the M939 series of vehicles, the M923, the 928 were drop-side cargo trucks with no troop seating fitted. The M929 and 930 were dump trucks with some passenger space. The M931 and 932 were tractor trucks. The 934 and 935 were expansible vans, often fitted with communications equipment. The M936 was a rescue tow truck. The M939 and 944 had extra long wheelbases and were mostly meant to carry troops. And the M945 was a bridge transport. These various military functions had to, of course, be done on every kind of rugged terrain, with some requiring more off-road capabilities than others. SnowRunner's ANK MK38 is based on AM General's M939 and its A1 and A2 versions. The ANK MK38 is found for free in the northwest part of the Pedro map of Alaska, in perfect condition. You can find the highest engine upgrade, the Westline V12 N900, in the White Valley map, and the race suspension option in the Pedro Bay map, both are in Alaska. The active and tuned custom suspension upgrades are found in the Yukon region, so you'll have to buy them if you decide to use either of these suspension options in Alaska. This truck uses the off-road gearbox, and you can find this in various maps, so just buy it. The NK MK38 features always-on diff lock and all-wheel drive, has some awesome mud tires, features very good to excellent body balance. I would say excellent body balance, actually, even with tuned custom suspension. It attaches hitch trailers but has no frame add-on options. It is the first truly off-road truck we get in our playthrough so far, which is the category SnowRunner puts it in. I place this truck in my industrial heavy category. Now let's talk about the perfect cargo truck dimensions and design of this vehicle. Length 7.5 meters, width 2.5 meters, gives a length to width ratio of 3. Real life weight 2,046 pounds, run about 11 tons, and game mass rating 10,000. It's a little more weighty in-game than the Caterpillar CT681, both of which have the same level of powerful engines. Body balance, I'll say excellent, but you have to add in that it's a tuned custom suspension. That's the one that I used. Now, because M939 was designed to handle the most rugged terrain and is essentially a cargo truck for troops and or equipment, depending on the variant, they made the perfect dimensions. The length, width, and height, without raising suspension, are ideal for body balance. Of course, you need to get the raised or tuned custom suspension to get the larger tires and more ground clearance, since SnowRunner is all about hardcore off-road. And this does affect body balance, but my experience from my playthrough would say that this truck is still one of the more stable I have in spite of the tuned custom suspension selected, even though it can sometimes look tipsy. If you go with a lower, more normal suspension option, then it has perfect, ideal body balance. So these are these ideal dimensions for stability in this size of a truck. This is the only hauler I ever tried a mountain type contest with, and I was actually able to complete the race down to flags contest in Alaska with some practice runs, of course. Now, I don't recommend that at all. In Alaska, you should do that with a scout. And of course, I had some practice runs and failed runs, practice a little bit, but the truth is, I wouldn't do it again. The fact is that I was able to even complete it. If you try with other hauling trucks, you won't even be able to complete a contest like that, but you have to drive perfectly. So of course I would not recommend doing mountain, because that terrain just isn't suitable for any big truck like this. You need a smaller truck, like a Chevrolet Apache or Rizwani Hercules 6x6 or something like that. Use that kind of truck if you want to complete those contests, especially going up the mountains, scaling the mountains. The terrain there is just not suitable for any kind of big trip. But I still was able to complete it, so that's how good the body balance is. in spite of the tuned custom suspension. The real-life weight is greater than the Cat's CT681's, and the game mass rating is also larger. It's nice and proportionate, and a good representation of its real-life weight. So far so good. I like the mass. Sometimes the mass is way heavier in game and vice versa. Sometimes it's way heavier in real life and it's lighter, so I like the nice and proportionate weight here. It's heavier in real life than the CT681, and it's heavier in the game as well. This is a purely off-road 6x6 cargo truck. The configurations, it's only 6x6, all-wheel drive, always on, diff lock, always on. Now, just as in the real world, SnowRunner's ANK MK38 does not have a 6x4 version, as it's meant for off-road use only. It features a 6x6 always on all-wheel drive and always on differential lock, giving it perfect off-road traction. It is only the second truck I've used so far with always on for both AWD and diff lock, with the Lodestar 1700 being the other one. The gearbox selected has to be the off-road, no other one makes sense. It doesn't feature a special gearbox in-game, so we just use the one all heavy-duty trucks use for off-road. It gives you the two low gears, low plus and low minus, and the high gear. And of course you always can keep it on auto when the low gear, high gear is not suitable. The ANK MK38 hosts some of the best mud tires we've seen yet, perfectly suited for Alaska's harsh terrain. The tires you should get are the 51-inch mud tires AMHS1. That's a 0.5 rating in the asphalt, 2.0 in the off-road, dirt off-road, and of course 2.4 in the mud. You get 4 suspension options at stock, raised, active, and tuned custom. In my playthrough, while most vehicles have multiple tire options, including this one, well, the ANK MK38, especially since it has access to the beautiful 51-inch mud tires with a 2.4 rating in the mud, it just doesn't make sense for you to use any other set. You may even consider the chain tires, but I would recommend that you pair this truck with with those chain tires equipped and a crane. So I use the Kodiak C70 and the Cat's CT681 in Alaska. You can even winch the ANK MK38 where you need to go uphill on road, but in most cases the game does give you some snow or off-road terrain that goes along with the road, so that you can ride up that to maintain traction with these mud tires. And because obviously on ice roads, if there's only ice roads and there's nothing else to attach to or no other way for you to go up, then you can't go up unless you have chain tires. Even with regular highway tires, you can't go up. It's too icy and it's too slippery, you won't get any traction. Whenever you need to you're going back and forth from different types of terrain, sometimes I like to pair trucks. The ANK MK38 can go with the Kodiak C70 or preferably the Cat CT681, both of which I equip with chain tires for a map like Alaska or region like Alaska. Now, while this truck's mud tires are not the best in the game, they are the third best I have come across, with only the Pacific P16s and Cat 745Cs tires being better for deep snow, mud, and marsh. The ANK MK38 gets 4 suspension options: stock, active, race, and tuned custom. You must get one of the race suspensions to allow for the 51-inch AMHS1 mud tires, and they only come in 51-inch. And without these, the truck's value is greatly diminished. Although it's still not a bad truck in stock suspension. Now, with active, you have the option to raise or lower suspension on road. Honestly, this only sounds good for real life, as the M939's applications were less off-road demanding than others. And it would be nice to lower suspension for greater stability and when you don't need the higher ground clearance. However, for this hardcore off-roading game, you really should only pick between raised and tuned custom, with the latter looking a little offbeat and unstable but still more reliable than most of the vehicles up until this point of the game. My logic is, I will always use the highest stable suspension available for any truck, and often when the higher suspension is not stable, like with the Scout 800 and others, I just don't use the truck. Ground clearance is almost as essential on rugged terrain as the tire types you select. The Derry Longhorn is an example of a truck with great off-road configurations, but ruined by low ground clearance. And of course, I'll do that review eventually. Having larger tires increases the amount of surface area of the tire that can dig into the mud or snow without actually getting stuck. Larger tires also provide higher ground clearance, which also helps prevent trucks getting stuck in mud, swimming in water, getting stuck in blades of grass or marsh, etc. All the more reason to get the 51-inch bad boys. This military cargo truck features maneuverability and control required for the uneven, winding paths it has to regularly scale. Steering, I give it a rating of short to medium. And of control, I would say excellent on off-road terrain. For a hauler, the ANK MK38 features one of the shortest turning radius, allowing you to make really sharp turns uphill, downhill on bumpy terrain. Now granted, with tuned custom suspension equipped, driving on bumpy terrain and going uphill or downhill adds danger and really tests the stability of this truck. I say it passes, as long as you're careful in the angles you take when turning, or sometimes just slowing down, using low normal instead of low plus. This maneuverability is consistent with what the M939 was used for in its military applications, of course, in real life. The truck, of course, that the ANK MK38 is based on. Because you are going to use the 51-inch mud tires, and especially on icy terrain, don't expect great traction. I recommend you don't go above high gear because you will easily slip out of control. And even with high gear, be ready to slow down and go back to auto. If you use the chain tires, I'm sure you will get better grip and good traction. But then you lose the biggest advantage of this truck. That's its mud tires and off-road terrain and cargo hauling capabilities. On off-road terrain, I literally did not feel the slightest bit of terrain feedback. Typically, when a vehicle has the kind of maneuverability this truck gets, it experiences a ton of feedback, making it harder to maintain control. But unless you drive like a maniac on road with mud tires, which are not meant for extended on-road use anyway, you should enjoy driving the ANK MK38, especially off-road. And where you have issues like going uphill, as I mentioned before, you could always couple this truck with a Cat CT681 or Kodiak C70 or whatever your choice of truck with a crane plus equipped with chain tires, so you can scale the icy roads no problem and just winch this truck. But do it however you want to do it. I think it would be a big waste to change the tires. But of course, with the mud tires, you're not going to get the kind of traction you would with highway tires, and especially with chain tires on icy roads. SnowRunner gives this truck so much love that they overpowered the engine 5 times over. The real-life engine, and obviously we're talking about the M939 A2 version, was a Cummins 6CT A8.3, featuring an 8.3-liter turbocharged inline 6-cylinder diesel engine with 240 horsepower at 2100 RPM and 745 pound force-feet torque at 1500 RPM, and a typical hauling capability of around 16 tons, including its own weight, of course. Considered a 5-ton hauler, that's how much you can load in terms of people and cargo, other equipment, everything. A 5-ton cargo truck, but you got to include its own weight when you talk about how much you can haul. Obviously, it has to haul the weight of the truck itself and its cargo. And the estimated max gross combination weight, I put at about 70,000 pounds. That's about 35 tons. The game engine is a Westline V12 M900, 210,000 torque, 10,000 mass, obviously, for the truck itself, and that gives it a power to weight ratio of 21. It's very high. Very few trucks have more than that. The real-life engine is only made for relatively light hauling, focusing more on stability and off-roading capabilities. As the M939 was a military cargo truck, advertised in the 5-ton category, its attached sideboard bed was not meant to haul more than 5 tons of passenger and material cargo. Sure, they could have fitted it with a more powerful engine, but they still don't, because it just doesn't suit its function. Now what SnowRunner did, the ANK MK38, is turn it into an overpowered off-road truck. Looking at the real-life engine torque, I would say this truck should be in my heavy-duty class, but because SnowRunner gives it the same engine the P12 and P16 use, I had no choice but to put it in my industrial heavy category. Now normally I don't like it when the game engine doesn't reflect the real-life one, especially when it's underpowered, but considering that this is a hardcore off-roading game and not limited to military applications, I understand and appreciate what Sabre did here, especially as a player. Driving this truck adds a lot to the fun element, but just note that there is a big difference between what the M939 can haul in the real world and what the ANK MK38 can do in the game. Another point, like for why they probably never, they could have added, a bigger engine or something. We got stability and control and all of that stuff. And of course, something else you have to consider is when you're on heavy off-road terrain, even inside the game, right? Very little times, like heavy deep mud or deep snow, you can rarely go fast, and especially when you're going downhill, really steep hills and steep descents, you've got to really go slow and be careful. It's too dangerous to go fast. So having an incredibly powerful engine doesn't really help you. It's more important to have suitable tires for the type of terrain you're going on and go nice and steady. Obviously the US Army will have rules and regulations for how fast a truck can go. Especially for this truck, it does. So while it surely could have been capable and could have had bigger track, it's just not suitable for its function. In the game though, SnowRunner, hardcore off-roading game, so they gave it and really gave this truck a lot of love. Which is cool, I don't have a problem with that. If the ANK MK38 has a weakness in SnowRunner, it's the fuel consumption coupled with a very low fuel reserve. Fuel tank only a measly 200 liters. Fuel consumption efficiency, the average highest fuel expenditure under the heaviest pressure from sideboard plus attached cargo on rough terrain and going uphill is approximately 22 liters per minute. That's with the off-road gearbox, all-wheel drive and diff lock, of course, always on, under heavy load on off-road terrain. Now, I'm not talking about deep mud here, because again, you just can't go fast there, and you'll never be able to get up to the highest fuel expenditure anyway. But when you're going uphill, you can still move along with rough terrain, not exactly roads or anything like that. Consumption really depends upon damage status, terrain, gearbox, and load. Carried on rear tandem axle plus haul trailers. The spikes go over the stable rating I just gave you. But 22 liters is a lot. That's higher than even the P12 and P16. The M939 was a 1940s design. Even with modern advancements, it's good that SnowRunner makes the game version of the truck a fuel hog. It's actually even more fuel hungry than the P12 and P16, which carry a lot more weight than this truck. The always-on, all-wheel drive and diff lock are most likely in play here, but however you look at it, this truck is going to drink fuel like water. Unfortunately, the fuel reserve doesn't help the situation, only offering players a 200-liter tank. Now, to be quite honest, in the Alaska region, where fuel and trucks are readily available, this is not as much of an issue, and that's why you can get away with having this. But having tested in harder regions, the Kola Peninsula comes to mind, where fuel is more scarce and maps are larger, this 200 liters won't get you very far, requiring support trucks with fuel or strategically placed reserves to allow you to complete tasks. You can attach a 2,000-liter fuel carrier, but then that diminishes its hauling capabilities. If you want to use it for some light cargo loading and the terrain permits it, you can try attaching this fuel carrier and loading the cargo on the sideboard and managing it that way. But any way you look at it, this is going to be a challenge for the ANK MK38. How do I take it on these long runs and do the cargo run, but then have enough fuel to get there and get back? Only weakness for this truck. Only weakness. Now we talk about this truck's functionality, usability, and reliability. The NK MK38 can attach the typical hitch trailers all hauling trucks can, but it is limited in its frame add-ons to the fixed sideboard bed it comes with. This makes it look exactly like the M939, except the SnowRunner adaptation can and should attach trailers. No doubt in-game, this limits players' applications. You can't use a crane or low saddle or high saddle attachments. But considering the heavy terrain this game has, which gets worse as you make progress in your playthrough, having an overpowered, stable hauler with good mud tires is incredibly helpful. Even in Alaska, which is relatively easy compared to future regions, it's nice to have a truck that can scale the snowy parts of the terrain with ease. This vehicle will undoubtedly be of use throughout my playthrough, and yours as well. In Alaska, I used it repeatedly for the typical cargo deliveries, often coupled with the CAT's CT681 or the Kodiak C70, so they could provide the crane and help on icy terrain. And of course, muddy terrain, I would always use the ANK MK38 and winch the CAT CT681, so I could take it where I needed to provide the crane support. In the case of the CAT CT681, it offered flatbed plus crane, giving the ANK MK38 hauling support as well. So if I had like 4 pieces of cargo I need to do 2, I can put a place on here, or maybe 4 for the ANK MK38, and then get the CAT CT681 is also bringing in 2, or sometimes even 4, and they both work very well together. That tag team for these trucks was phenomenal for me. Not as good as with the Kodiak C70, but still good enough. I had the heavy crane attached to the Kodiak C70, maybe a trailer, or sometimes no trailer because it's not as powerful as the CT681, and just use it to winch wherever I needed the crane support. I also did multiple contests with this truck, most of which I would recommend. But one I wouldn't, the mountain scaling one, I would say use a scout like the Apache or the Rizvani Hercule 6x6. But for the really tough terrain contests like river contest, or the one called To the Top and Back, there was no better truck in your fleet at this point. It even handled the weather forecast contest, but I would recommend the CAT 745C for that one, because I only got a silver for that, and in order to get gold, you would have to use the 745C, because no other truck you have scales harsh terrain like that truck. Except you can attach the service trailer, so you have to winch it, which can still work for the contest. With this truck, the best I could get was a silver trophy. Normally, when it's limited, like I talked about the Western Star 6900 twin steer, and I talked about how it was so limited in its applications because it was big, and there was other issues with that truck, and I gave that review. But in this truck, being limited to this cargo bed doesn't seem that limited. It's still so useful. It can attach trailers like the 6900 twin steer cannot, but it really doesn't seem so limited. Most of the time, that's what you need, especially for this kind of trucks. You just use it for hauler. Don't try to attach a crane because it can attach it. You just have to know, hey, you're going to need some crane support, but other than that, you're good to go. It's an amazing hauler, especially for the rough terrain. And for my verdict, even if you had to buy it, as soon as it would be available, I would pick it up. I would pick up the NK MK38. Considering the fact that you get it for free as soon as you find it in the northwest part of the Pedro map of Alaska, in perfect condition, mind you should be nothing but appreciative and get it back to the garage ASAP. After upgrading it, you get a ridiculously overpowered sideboard bed hauler that can attach a trailer, 2-piece or 4-piece. The ANK MK38 features always-on diff lock and all-wheel drive, and while this increases fuel consumption, it also makes its time on off-road that much more enjoyable. It has some awesome mud tires, third best type I've used so far in my playthrough. It features amazing body balance, even with tuned custom suspension, and this level of ground clearance makes it one of the best trucks for off-road in our fleet so far. It is a first truly off-road truck we get, whereas some of the other ones we have access to at this early stage of the playthrough aren't very much more off-road capable than our typical heavy-duty trucks after being converted into off-roaders. So the one I'm referring to with the Royal BM17 or the Paystar 5700, a lot of these early ones, the ones you have access to, they're just off-road by name, I would say. Off-road in name only. They're not really proper off-roading trucks. This is that first proper off-road. You use it and you're like, okay, yeah, I understand why they call it off-road train. But I put it in my industrial heavy category because the off-road category is kind of screwed up. Same thing with many other categories. That's why I have my own categorization system. The ANK MK38 is a free gift to help you in SnowRunner playthrough. Take it back to the garage, upgrade it, and enjoy. That's all I have for this review. I hope you enjoyed it. I really like doing these reviews. I like researching the trucks and hope you get good background and history and see how the different trucks are different in real life and in the game. So if you enjoyed, hey, don't forget to give me a like, share, subscribe, give me a little encouragement, and I'll keep making as many as I can. And I'll be working on the next one. I think the next one, there's going to be some other videos here and there, but I would say that the next review video will probably be, I don't know, I think it might be the Chevrolet Apache, could be another truck. I'm thinking probably the Chevrolet Apache, but it could be another. Could be maybe the Dairy Longhorn. I think I have enough footage for that one, enough experience within Alaska. Give my feedback on that one. So probably with the Dairy Longhorn, maybe the Chevrolet Apache. A few other trucks to review here in Alaska. Royal BM17 was very little, but I may end up reviewing that one. But these are some of the upcoming truck reviews. So anyway, hope you're enjoying it. Hope you like my channel. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Thank you very much for watching. Ish Gaming, signing off.